Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. I have my new friend Faith Rivera with me. I want to shout out to Dominique for bringing us together. So, hi, Dominique. Faith, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share today. I've been really looking forward to our chat. So my name is Faith Rivera, and I am the CEO and founder of Civitas Consulting. And our entire mission is to build capacity for change for mission-driven leaders. And so we really focus on working with those leaders to elevate their impact and their income through three intentional service areas. The first being funding, so making sure that you've got the money coming in the door to run the organization the way that you need. The second is through strategy. So making sure that you've got intentional strategies put together that feel like you, not just fitting into someone else's mold. And then the last piece is professional development. So I always joke with people that I feel like I was put on this earth to be a teacher, but not in the classroom, but through the professional work that I do. So through those three areas, we work with mission-driven leaders, like I mentioned, whether they're nonprofit folks, whether they're small business owners, community leaders, really to make sure they're building a legacy to share with others.
I love that. Now, let's pull some of these things apart because,
Sure.
as my audience, I always apologize because the best conversations always happen just before record, and then we try to recreate that. But you and I were talking about the tragedy of the phrase nonprofit because I've met a lot of actual mission-driven founders who build out their nonprofit, and then they spend all their money from their for-profit feeding their nonprofit, and they never quite have the impact. So let's talk about your three pillars, and I'll let you guide me. But I think one of the things I see in nonprofit space is the belief that we should all be poor. And to me, that feels wrong because if the nonprofit isn't thriving, it's not doing the work it was meant to do. How would you respond to that, Faith?
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I have this conversation with nonprofit leaders a lot of the time is you have to have money coming in the door so that you can live out the services and the mission that you really set forth, right? I think there's this odd connotation that people assume nonprofit equals broke, right? I know you mentioned that, Jeff. And the thing is money makes the world go round, unfortunately. Like we have to have money coming in the door to offer services, to pay people. The people who are offering these services and goods through nonprofits should not be on public assistance. Like they should be able to pay their bills too, right? And the people that they're serving should as well. And the way that I like to think about the nonprofit world a little bit differently, I think, than most people is nonprofits are businesses, right? Like their funding structure might be slightly different. The way that they bring money in might be slightly different. But I think that's part of the reason why the social enterprise movement is taking the storm that it is because whether someone is a business owner or a nonprofit leader, I think there's such a desire from the public right now to see organizations that do good. And so with the nonprofits that I work with, like, yes, you should be applying for grants. Yes, you should be getting donations and fundraising. Yes, you should have some kind of social enterprise where you're selling a good or service to bring revenue into your organization and finding other ways, to partner and collaborate with other organizations, whether they're businesses or nonprofits, because the more that we can share these opportunities and kind of share some of the overhead, the easier it is for us all to make the impact that we want at the end of the day.
I love that. And I think when you look at it, there should be, other than the governance issue, when it comes to the revenue side of things, and I'm meeting more and more people that are getting into the social good and things like that. I think there's this myth that nonprofits have to be funded either by donors or by donations that come from small, there's the big sponsors or the small donors. And one of the things I can't wrap my head around is why don't nonprofits have their own revenue stream? And yes, the vast majority of nonprofits are membership businesses, to call it what it is. But what are some of the revenue streams you wish more people were looking at, either for nonprofit or for profit?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jeff. I think some of the ones that I typically kind of talk with, whether it's my small business or nonprofit clients about, there's a couple ones that I think really come top of mind. Number one is events. I know a lot of people don't like the work that comes into events, but there's such a great place to build community connection. And people really want that, right? Like even though we are more digitally connected now than we ever have been, people are more lonely and isolated now than they ever have been before. And so I think for organizations that it aligns with your mission and values, being able to offer events, whether it's workshops, conferences, little social events, like those are things that can bring money in the door, whether it's ticket sales, sponsorships, opportunities for people to buy things from you. You can sell your goods and services. So I think events is one. Another one is if you have a physical location, rent your space out. I mean, as someone who's an event organizer, we're always looking for spaces that are either affordable, low cost, no cost, in-kind support. Like those things really make a difference. And not every place has their own space. So if you have one, rent it out. You're not using it 24/7. I promise you that. And then the third thing is I think too many times people don't capitalize on their knowledge and experience in the way that they should. And so I've worked with a couple of nonprofits recently where I've asked their founder or executive director, what social capital, what knowledge could you sell to people to be able to bring notoriety to your organization and money in the door? Is it a course? Is it speaking? Is it consulting? Is it taking what you do for your clients, but slightly tweaking it for a business or nonprofit audience so that your brand is associated with that area of expertise? So I think those would be the top three.
I agree with all of that, and I would flip the order and put the education at top, just because I'm a weirdo. But one of the things, so I see a lot of Chamber of Commerce, and I'm sad because I don't think they read Reddit as much as I do, but there's always this talk about relevance. And it's funny because when I talk to chamber executives, they always talk about renewal rates and membership drives. And it's funny to me because the question is always, they have one lever. How much do we charge? Sorry, they have two levers. How much do we charge and how many members? X times Y equals revenue. And I'm like, that just feels like lazy math when you're just keeping it there. Whereas if you talk about the value you can contribute and how you can be relevant, I would say especially today, and you and I are going to have probably another episode just on this, but the brain power of the executive on that chamber, of the sponsors, and even of the attendees. What if instead of trying to sell me a new membership at a higher rate, what if we focused on how we as a collective can support one another? Because to me, as I see AI exploding and social media doing whatever the hell it's doing, I'm a little disturbed for humanity. But my hope moment, and sorry to say this, but I have faith in it. I did not mean to go there. Sorry, people. But I have deep faith in the need of humans to connect and be together. And honestly, if you think about it, like right now we have all of these charities, quite frankly, all of these small businesses shouting into the void, trying to outshout each other. And, it's kind of like watching a choir where everybody's singing a different song. And it's like, what if we just harmonized a little and brought this together? Like, one of my favorites is if I'm a chamber, why wouldn't I host events at my various members so that people can see their cool little facilities?
Yeah, I actually serve on the board of directors for our local chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners here in Columbus, where I live. And that's one of my favorite things that we get to do. We call them a Be a Boss event. They're super fun. And it's always highlighting a member or a local women-owned business where people can actually come into their space, whether they're a restaurant, a workout facility, a co-working space. And the reason that those are some of my favorites is you kind of get to see people's expertise and you get to experience what they're bringing to the world, and it brings them business, right? It brings them visibility. I'm very much a proponent of we are better together. And so if I'm going to support a business, I tell my husband this all the time is I'm willing to pay more if it means I get to support a small or micro business compared to if I'm going to support a large corporation. I know what it's like to grind and hustle to build this organization from the ground up. And so I'm much more likely to support someone who's in my space and someone who kind of gets what I, have been through myself compared to a, very large scale organization.
Well, and I tell people if I want cheap and high volume, I'll go to Costco. But most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather go to a local business.
Yep.
If I'm buying something that I buy a lot, I'm going to go and meet the person and say, how did this product get here? Um,
Yeah.
to me, that is huge. And, it's funny. One of the things I advocate for a lot of groups, especially chambers, is why don't you have a podcast? Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be fancy, but you could just do little videos and say, okay, here's what so and so does, and here's where they are in the community. Because I think when you know the people, it's a lot harder to say, well, your business went under, so what? I'm supporting big box stores. Um,
Mm-hmm.
now, I do support big box stores because they bring local jobs.
Yeah.
However, there's a balance there that I think we forget because when all the little businesses go away, there's nobody left to buy at the box stores.
Yeah. And I know I'm not going to be able to remember the exact statistic, but being on the board of directors, we hear stats all the time of what small businesses do for economic development, economic mobility, and entrepreneurship is one of the fastest growing sectors of the economy. The job market is a little bit iffy right now, and a lot of people are really desiring to create something impactful for themselves. And we as small business owners are the backbone of the economy. Yes, my small business only employs a handful of people. I'm not an Amazon with tens of thousands of employees, but to those employees that I have, like our business is important to the clients that we serve. Our business is important. And so I think the more that we can support small businesses that are really trying to make an impact.
Yeah, and I offend people with this, but there's no offense intended. But I think the small business, we're like the ants of the business ecosystem. We will go places nobody else wants to. We'll solve problems that are too
Yep.
small for others. And quite frankly, we clean up and find ways to make money through the gaps in the system. So,
Yep.
we
We get
we
to
got
be innovative.
yeah, and I love the big companies. They serve their place, but honestly, if you took small business out of any community, I don't think a community would survive for long.
Exactly.
So I don't need statistics to know that, I see, in my neighborhood, I see, local mom and dad sort of businesses, that there's painters and carpenters, and yes, there's the big builders. But again, if you have a massive global um, building construction company, you're not going to come and renovate somebody's basement for $1,000 or whatever. It's about scale. So,
Yeah.
um, let's talk about some of your favorite. You mentioned the revenue, and then there was the strategy piece. So, what kind of strategy do you wish people were more aware of? Because between you and I hear a lot of people using the word strategy, and I'm like, you might want to look that up because it's not exactly what you just told me. So between you and me, I think one of the problems small businesses and nonprofits, they mistake tactics for strategy. So what kind of strategy are you opening their eyes to?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I love that you said that because I think strategy is one of those words that is thrown around a little bit too much. But when I'm working with a client, one of the things that I always ask them first and foremost is like, what is their vision for their life and their organization, so that it's rooted in where they want to go, not again, not someone else's mold or something that they saw on social media that they feel that they should be doing. I also ensure that I'm understanding their values and how they want to live them out. So always give the example that I had a client a couple of months ago that she told me education was one of her most important values. But then when I looked at the way that she was offering her services, there was no educational service offerings. And so, we'll just call her Anna. I was like, Anna, you say that education is your number one value, but the way that you're offering your services doesn't have any educational components. And that was our very first session. And she completely reworked the way that she was offering her services. And she told me within just a couple of days, her business felt so much more freeing because she was actually operating in a way that felt in line with who she was and where she wanted to go. So that's just one example. But then I also have a framework. I call it my capacity blueprint framework, where I go over 5 unique areas within an organization to help them understand where they actually need to start. So it goes over leadership, their operations, their personnel, their services, and their finances. So we kind of take a deep dive in each of those areas to understand where are you going that's doing well, where are you kind of struggling? Because if any of those 5 areas are not strong, that's going to be your energy leak and that's going to be your capacity leak. That's going to really stop you from being able to grow. And everything that I do, and it's something that Dominique and I talk about very, very often, is it's all tied into sustainability and ensuring that our leaders are not burning out. I've been hospitalized multiple times because of burnout, because everything I do is so mission driven, but I wasn't building my business, my life, my former career in a way that was actually sustainable and aligned with the way that I wanted to live. And so that's part of why it is the ground level, the foundation of everything that I do now, because I've lived the opposite way, where everything was based on what someone else wanted. And it literally drained the life and health out of me.
Well, it's funny because I think Dominique and I had that conversation as well, because when you're starting out, the only way for a small business to grow is based on the hustle of the founder.
Yep.
We accidentally become the load-bearing structure. And then at some point, you got to put in some support so that we can continue. And I think that's one of the greatest weaknesses of my audience. We will fall down before we'll let anybody else down. But when it comes to self-care, we're like, yeah, I'll get it next month. And then, as you pointed out, when burnout knocks on the door, there's no, well, let me get back to you. It's like, no, you're taking a break right now.
Yeah, if you don't build in breaks and rest and caring for yourself, your body and your mind will get to a place where it literally forces you. And that recovery time is not quick. I mean, depending on who you look at, a lot of people will say like burnout takes about anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to fully recover. And also, I've asked my clients this too, that feel like they're kind of trickling towards that, is what kind of life are you building? Like, yes, you're building this amazing business, but like, what's the life that you're trying to build alongside it?
And I think that's right now, it seems more pervasive than ever, because you have all of these influencers saying, there is a hustle culture out there. And there are the people that say, I think it was Damon John who wrote a book called Rise and Grind. And yeah, that worked for him. However, it also ignores whatever support systems he had, and that's, I'm not criticizing him because I know he is a hardworking person. However, a lot of people take it so literally and they forget that it's not about, anybody I know who's been more than slightly successful has managed to build and develop teams. I met somebody the other day who runs many multiples of a multi-million-dollar business. And he said, I could only grow myself to about $1 million a year, and then I'd burn out, and then I'd sell the business and I'd start over. And he said it was only when I started building the team that I got to go beyond where I was. And I think I see that in a few nonprofits too, where the executive, again, we got to keep the budget in line. So the executives are doing things that, quite frankly, high school summer intern kid could do, and they're burning out because, well, I work for a nonprofit, so I got to donate, 80 hours a week to the cause. And it's like, no. So
no, I hear you completely. And I have that conversation with a lot of founders, a lot of mission driven leaders and I want to, dispel the myth that like there's never hustle and grind seasons, because there are, right? Maybe you have a new launch or you have a big event coming up. For nonprofits, you're trying to get your year-end fundraising goal, or for businesses, you're trying to hit your revenue goal. But it's what is that kind of baseline and expectations that you're setting for yourself and the people around you? And what kind of boundaries are you putting in with your clients, right? Like, I've told my team, I've told my clients, like, you can text me any hour of the day, but just know I'm not going to respond at 10 o'clock at night. And if I do, please say, Faith, why are you responding to a text message at 10 o'clock at night? Right. So, like, putting those boundaries out there for people and expecting them to respect them. And then you have to respect them too. But if you're going to have a season of grind, what is the end point? And when are you going to actually build in some of that time for intentional recovery too?
It's funny. It sounds overly simplistic, but I grew up on a farm, and spring was hustle. Summer, you sort of tended to. There's a bit of a slowdown, and you spent the summer getting the equipment ready for the harvest in the fall.
Yep.
And then winter, it was quieter time. But I think we've lost that and honestly, I feel like I'm about to time travel and maybe move back to the 1800s. But we've lost those natural cycles where you hustle and you hustle, recover. And
Yep.
I actually had a guest on the show who's a business coach. And he said, if you look at professional athletes, they train hard and then they stop and recover.
Yep.
And for some reason, as knowledge workers, we're like, yeah, those rules don't apply to me. The brain is more dangerous to burn out than a muscle, because a muscle, you're going to strain, sprain, or a tear. Your brain, you're going to end up in the hospital wondering what the hell happened.
Yep. And the recovery time is a lot longer, and you can't have a surgery to fix it.
Yeah. And there's no magic, let's put some ice on it or whatever. So I'm fascinated by the myth that, and again, Damon Wayans, I would bet if you went and looked at his life, he had his hustle times and then he had some sort of recovery that he maybe didn't think to put in the book because it was relaxing to him. He didn't feel like it was part of the story. But I think that's, I'm a big fan of yin and yang. And, if you have hustle, you're going to have burnout if you don't have recovery.
Yeah.
Now,
And
one
rest
thing
isn't as sexy to talk about either. Like, I love to talk about it, but most people, you can't monetize on rest necessarily. So I don't think a lot of people like to talk about it as much.
Well, it's funny because I burnt out once and I spent probably 4 days completely bedridden. I couldn't get out from under the covers. And probably about 3 years before I got back to normal. And I'm like, if you told me that was the price I was paying for my 100-hour work weeks, I probably would have slowed down. Maybe not. But one thing I will say, and I see this in our neurodiverse community, the nonlinear thinkers, we tend to overestimate our endurance and we underestimate our need for self-care. So one of the things I've been doing is building self-care into everything.
Yes.
And it's amazing what a difference it makes. But I will admit, I am a phoenix. I need to burn bright and hard some days and then just fall over. But now it's days, not months. I'm like, I know when the red flags go up. Now, so you talked about your 3 pillars, and I'm sorry, but I just blanked on the first 2 were revenue and strategy. What was third again?
Professional development. So think events, custom training, speaking, all of that fun stuff.
I love it. And honestly, again, I'm going to pick on the nonprofits. If these are things we need anyways, and by the way, this, to me, it goes way back to Stephen Covey. He talked about sharpening the saw. If I'm not developing, I'm slowly decaying. And if you're a nonprofit and you recognize that, I think there's a great opportunity to educate people while getting in your development as well. Because one of the things I see all the time, especially in chambers, is this big budget line for development. And it's like, what if you brought that development in and you actually turned it into a revenue stream rather than, you travel across the country, attend conferences. So what kind of professional development do you look for in your people?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't give from an empty cup. And I do think there is a piece, not just in self-care, but also in learning and developing as a leader. And so I love training. I think that's one of my favorite things and what I get to do. My natural gifts are around coaching and motivation. So that's the kind of style that I bring into what I do when I teach. And whether it's through partnering with Dominique to do our special curated events that we do in person, whether it's, a team reaching out to me for custom PD, or even if I'm looking at trainings that I want for myself, the biggest things that I want is, I don't just want motivation. I want information that I can actually take back that will help me apply to what I'm going to do or what I'm going through. I think too many times, whether they're speakers, event planners, they don't actually understand what their audience needs. So they plan this event and then people walk out thinking like, what the hell did I just spend my time and money on? And Dominique and I have that conversation all the time, is like, everything that we put together, we want it to be so intentionally curated that everyone that walks in feels better off when they leave. And they're like, wow, this was created especially for me. And you want to know how you do that? You ask. Ask what people need. Ask what kind of things they're struggling with. What would success look like to them? So that it's not just what Faith and Dominique want, but it's really, how do we build something intentional that has the audience that we're trying to serve in mind?
I love that. And I look at a lot of events and I call them empty calories, because you feel really good while you're there. And then you
Yes,
get to work Monday and you're like, what changed? And,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
to me, if it's not transformational, why bother? And
Yeah.
it fascinates me when people build, I have some friend who spent 18 months building her curriculum. And I really annoyed her because I said, how many people have you shared your curriculum with? And she's like, well, it's not done yet. And I'm like, how do you build something without the audience in mind? And she looked
Yep.
at me and she's like, oh, shit. I do that a lot to people. I'm sorry. I think that's my nickname, is oh, shit, because I asked that question and they're like, oh. So, and I know you and Dominique are doing an event coming up in November, I think, in rumor has it. There's an irony there. I don't know if she shared this, but I recognized few years ago that the word November literally has the word no in it. So November is my reset season where I say no to everything. And
Mm.
Dominique asked me if I'd speak, and I was like, oh, crap.
She did tell me that. Yeah, we've got our retreat in November. We actually just signed the contract for the venue this week. And then we're also already planning underway for our conference in Columbus, Ohio next year. It's a 2.5 day event, July 20th through 22nd of 2027.
I love it. Now, I could talk to you all day. I won't keep you, I promise. Where can people go to connect with you, learn a little bit more about you, and maybe find ways to collaborate with
Yeah, the best ways to connect with me are on social media or through our website. So on Facebook and Instagram, we're at Civitas. I'm on LinkedIn as Faith Rivera, and then our website, allocivitas.com, has all of the things that we do, how we help people. There's a free coffee chat link on there for anyone who just wants to pick my brain and get on my calendar. Love opportunities for collaboration. And I always tell people, even if I'm not the right fit to support them, I am a great connector and I love connecting people with people that can support them.
I love it. And for whatever reason, those people are drawn to the show and everybody else runs away. So um, I know exactly why I built it that way. But
Exactly.
um, Faith, I want to thank you for, on the recommendation of Dominique, you said, sure, let's do this. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing your magic with the audience.
Thank you so much.